It was a cold January morning in 1876 when a carriage rattled into the sleepy English village of Ashbourne. Few visitors ever came. Ashbourne was a place people were born into and buried in, not one you stumbled upon. From the carriage stepped a woman wrapped in a faded green cloak. Her boots were scuffed, her gloves worn thin. She kept her hood low, shadowing most of her face. Only her eyes were visible, two piercing orbs that seemed to hold storms within them. Mrs. Fletcher, the seamstress, who happened to be walking by, stopped in her tracks. She later whispered to her neighbor, "Those eyes. They looked as though they had witnessed both heaven and hell." The stranger walked silently toward the village inn, her steps measured, her posture weary. No one knew her name, but before that day was over, everyone knew her eyes. The Ashbourne Inn was run by Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne, a kindly couple who had seen all manner of travelers. Yet the woman unsettled them. She asked for a room in a voice soft, almost fragile, as though every word cost her effort. She paid in advance with coins that looked old and foreign. That evening, as the fire crackled in the common room, villagers gathered over pints of ale. Mr. Hawthorne couldn't help himself. "She's not like the others," he told the crowd. "There's something in her eyes, as though she's carrying a weight no one should bear." The villagers leaned in, curious. "A runaway?" one suggested. "Or hiding from the law," another muttered. But when Mrs. Hawthorne described the sorrow in those eyes, the room grew quiet. Even in a village full of gossip, no one wanted to say aloud what they truly felt. Those eyes carried tragedy. On Saturday, the market square bustled with energy. Farmers sold potatoes, shepherds traded wool, and Clara, the baker's daughter, stood behind a table stacked with warm loaves of bread. The stranger approached. Clara offered her a loaf, smiling politely. But when their eyes met, Clara froze. She had never seen eyes like that, haunted, as though every tear shed in the world had left its trace there. "Thank you," the woman whispered, handing over coins. Her hand trembled as she touched Clara's. That night, Clara told her mother, "She looked at me, and I felt her sadness in my bones." It was like carrying someone else's grief for a moment. Thomas Reed, the village blacksmith, was a broad-shouldered man with soot-stained hands and a heart too soft for his size. One frosty evening, he saw the stranger struggling with a bundle of firewood near the inn. "Allow me, miss," he said, striding over. She hesitated, then nodded, letting him take the load. As they walked, Thomas tried to make conversation. "Cold this winter, isn't it?" "Worse than last year." She gave a faint smile but said nothing more. When they reached the inn, she finally looked up at him. For the briefest moment, Thomas saw something in her eyes. Guilt, raw and gnawing. The kind that eats at a person from the inside. He said nothing, but the image of those eyes stayed with him all night. Little Samuel, 8 years old, was known for his boundless curiosity. He often played marbles outside the inn, waiting for travelers to appear. One afternoon, he spotted the woman sitting by the window, staring out at the gray sky. He plucked a wildflower from the roadside and ran to her. "Here, miss," he said with a grin, holding it out. The woman knelt down, taking the flower gently. Her eyes brimmed with sudden tears. "Why do you cry, lady?" Samuel asked innocently. She shook her head, whispering, "Because sometimes kindness hurts more than cruelty." She tucked the flower carefully into her cloak, as though it were something precious. Samuel told his mother that evening, "She's sad, but she's not bad." "I know it." On Sunday morning, the village filed into the old stone church. The stranger slipped into the last pew, her hood still drawn. The pastor's sermon that day was about forgiveness. "Forgiveness," he said, his voice echoing against the stone walls, "is not for the innocent, but for the guilty who repent. We all carry sins. Yet if God can forgive, so must we." The woman's hands clenched tightly on the bench. Her shoulders shook. and a faint gasp escaped her lips. A few villagers turned to look. When the service ended, she remained seated, staring at the wooden cross above the altar with eyes so tormented that even the pastor hesitated to approach her. Widow Martha, known for her gentle nature, decided to visit the woman. She knocked softly on the in-room door, carrying a basket of bread and stew. The woman opened the door, just a crack. Her eyes peered out, wary yet weary. "I brought you some food," Martha said warmly. "We look after each other here." For a long moment's silence. Then the woman opened the door, just enough to take the basket. "You are kind," she whispered. "But if you knew who I truly was, you would not be." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, and Martha's heart ached. She left, troubled, but determined not to abandon the stranger. Ashbourne was a village where secrets rarely survived. By now, the stranger had been there for weeks, and curiosity boiled. In the tavern, theories flew. "She's a runaway wife," said one man. "No, she's hiding from the police," muttered another. But all agreed on one thing. Her eyes betrayed a story too terrible to imagine. Every glance she gave was like a confession without words. Some pitied her, others grew suspicious, and slowly her presence divided the quiet village. Thomas Reed couldn't leave it alone. The memory of her eyes gnawed at him. One afternoon he saddled his horse and rode to neighboring towns, asking about a woman with sorrowful eyes and a green cloak. Most shook their heads, but in one village an old trader paused. I heard of a lady like that, from Whitford, wasn't she? Her husband died in a fire. Some say she set it." The words struck Thomas like a hammer blow. A fire, a death, and suspicion of murder. When Thomas returned to Ashbourne, he looked at the woman differently. She noticed at once. They crossed paths outside the inn, and she caught the shift in his gaze. Curiosity mixed with judgment. "Don't," she said softly, almost pleading. He frowned. "Don't what?" "Don't look at me with questions in your eyes. The truth can destroy more than lies ever could." Her eyes locked with his, and in that moment, Thomas felt the depth of her torment. She wasn't merely hiding something. She was begging the world not to drag it out of her. But the seed of suspicion had already been planted. Clara, the baker's daughter, could not shake the memory of the stranger's eyes. That night, she dreamed vividly. She saw the woman standing in a burning house, her cloak aflame, screaming a man's name over the roar of fire. Smoke suffocated the air, and a terrible guilt filled the dream. Clara awoke with her heart racing. "It felt so real," she whispered to herself. She confided in her mother the next morning. Her mother scolded her gently. "It's just your imagination, child." But Clara couldn't forget it. The dream left her with a heavy truth she didn't fully understand. The woman was not wicked, but broken, caught between grief and guilt. A storm rolled over Ashbourne, rain lashing the cobblestones. Little Samuel, against his mother's warnings, ran near the swollen riverbank to chase his wooden toy boat. The ground was slick, and Samuel slipped, tumbling dangerously close to the rushing water. The villagers shouted, but before anyone could move, the cloaked woman dashed forward. She lunged, grasping Samuel's arm just as the bank crumbled beneath her feet. For a terrifying moment, both teetered at the edge. With sheer determination, she pulled him back, collapsing in the mud, clutching the trembling boy to her chest. "Why would you risk your life?" a farmer cried. Her voice broke, "Because no child should suffer because of me again." The villagers looked at one another uneasily. Again. What did she mean by that? Days later, as the storm debris was being cleared, Thomas Reed discovered a torn envelope lodged near the inn door. The paper was smudged by rain but still legible. The letter read, "Forgive me, though I know I do not deserve it. The fire was no accident, but neither was it murder. Truth lies in between. E.W.'s." Thomas's hand shook as he held it. The initials, E.W., finally gave the woman a name, at least part of it. His heart wrestled between pity and dread. Was she a victim, or had she confessed to something darker? Unable to hold back, Thomas confronted her outside the inn. He held up the letter. "E.W., is this yours?" Her face drained of color. For a moment, she looked ready to collapse. Then she met his eyes, her own brimming with tears. "Yes, it is mine." "Then tell me," Thomas pressed. "What happened? Who are you running from?" Her lips trembled. She took a shaky breath. "I am Eleanor Whitford, and yes, I was there the night my husband died." The weight of her words fell like a stone in the silence between them. They sat in the quiet of the churchyard, away from prying ears, as Eleanor told her truth. "My husband was a cruel man," she began. "When he drank, he struck me. That night, he was enraged, angrier than ever before. I feared for my life. So I locked him inside the room, just until he calmed. I thought it would save me." Her voice broke. "But he knocked over a lamp. Flames spread so fast. By the time I returned with the key, the fire devoured the door. I tried, Thomas, I tried. But I couldn't save him." Her eyes shone with torment. "So yes, I caused it, but not with intent." Thomas felt a chill. He could see the truth in her eyes. Her story wasn't just words. It was etched in her very soul. When whispers of Eleanor's confession spread, the village fractured. Some cried, "She's guilty of murder." Others, mostly women who knew the silent terror of harsh husbands, argued, "She's a victim. She only sought to protect herself." The tavern was filled with heated debates. The pastor urged compassion, while the constable quietly weighed whether her past warranted punishment. Children, however, still ran to her. Samuel clung to her cloak, declaring, "She saved me, and that's all I need to know." In the clash of voices, Eleanor became both villain and heroine, never one, always both. One Sunday afternoon, Samuel stood before a crowd gathered outside the church. His small voice trembled, but his words were pure. "If someone hurts you, and you didn't mean to hurt them back, that's different. God doesn't only see what you do, He sees your heart." The villagers fell silent. Out of the mouths of children, truth often rang clearest. Some wept quietly. Even the constable lowered his gaze, as if ashamed. Eleanor stood behind Samuel, tears streaking her face. His innocence had given her what she thought she no longer deserved, the chance to be seen as human again. Thomas Reed wrestled with his thoughts for days. He could expose her, see justice carried out, or he could choose another path. Finally, he went to her. "Eleanor," he said, his rough hands trembling slightly, "we've all done things we regret. But you're not the sum of one night. You're the woman who saved a child, who carries pain but still shows kindness." He reached for her hand. "Don't let your past define you. Let it teach you. And let us stand by you." Eleanor looked at him in shock, then gratitude. For the first time since she arrived, her eyes softened, no longer only filled with torment, but with the fragile spark of hope. Eleanor chose to stay in Ashbourne. She worked alongside Widow Martha to care for the poor, mended clothes for children, and even began teaching reading lessons in the church hall. At first, some villagers avoided her, but over time, deeds spoke louder than rumors. Slowly, hearts softened. Her eyes still carried sorrow, but it was no longer unbearable. Instead, there was resilience, a strength forged in the fires of her past, now used to light the way for others. One evening, Samuel presented her with another flower, just as he had on the day they met. She placed it in a glass of water and whispered, "This time, it doesn't hurt. It heals." Years later, children in Ashbourne grew up hearing the tale of Eleanor Whitford. Parents would tell them, "Look into her eyes. They once carried a terrible secret, but also the strength to rise from it." Eleanor's story became more than a tragedy. It was a testament that even the most broken hearts can choose to love again, to give again, to live again. The moral whispered through the village was simple, yet powerful. The past may scar us, but it does not have to define us. True strength lies not in hiding our wounds, but in using them to heal others. And so, the woman whose eyes once revealed a terrible secret became the woman whose eyes revealed something greater, the power of redemption.